So, do you ever feel like you're just drowning in a sea of opinions and hot takes? I mean, they're everywhere. But what if you had a superpower? One that lets you instantly see which arguments actually hold water and which ones are just, full of holes. Well, today, we're going to unlock that exact power, the power of logic. Let's dive in. Just think about your average day. You're scrolling through social media, maybe you're listening to the news or just talking to friends, and you are constantly, and I mean constantly, being bombarded with people trying to persuade you of something. So the big question is, how do you cut through all that noise and figure out what actually makes sense? And that right there is our mission for this explainer. See, before you can build a totally airtight case or, completely dismantle a weak one, you first have to know what the basic components even are. So let's start at square one and break down what an argument actually is. And the main tool we're going to be using on this mission is logic. Now, this isn't about being some kind of unfeeling robot, not at all. It's really just about having the right tools to separate solid reasoning from the kind of arguments that, frankly, fall apart the second you look at them a little too closely. Okay, so here's the secret, and it's actually pretty simple. Every single argument, I don't care how complex it sounds, really only has two basic parts. First, you've got your premises. Think of those as the evidence, right? The reasons someone is giving you. And then you've got the conclusion. That's the big point the evidence is supposed to prove. That's it. That's the fundamental blueprint for every argument out there. But here's a key distinction. Not all arguments make the same kind of promise. A deductive argument, well, it claims its premises offer an ironclad absolute guarantee for the conclusion. An inductive argument, on the other hand, is a bit more modest. It basically says, hey, based on this evidence, the conclusion is really, really likely or probable. Now, both are super useful, but it's absolutely crucial to know which one you're dealing with. Okay, now that we've got the building blocks down, let's meet the villain of our story. We're going to call them the nefarious author. Now, this isn't a single person, of course, but more of a stand-in for anyone out there who's using flawed reasoning, whether they mean to or not, to try and win you over to their side. And here's the thing about the nefarious author's tricks, what logicians call fallacies. They are masters of disguise. They sound so convincing because they're specifically designed to prey on our mental shortcuts and our biases, making a really weak argument seem way, way stronger than it actually is. Ah, a classic. See what's happening here? Instead of actually engaging with the economic plan, the real argument, the speaker just attacks the person. It's a total distraction from the actual issue, but gosh, it can be surprisingly effective. This is called the ad hominem fallacy. It's Latin for to the person. And the takeaway here is super simple. When you hear someone start attacking the person instead of the idea, your alarm bells should go off. You're not hearing a real argument anymore. You're just hearing a distraction. Here's another one of those classic tricks, this time from the real world. Just notice how this frames a massive, incredibly complex issue as a simple two-sided choice, right? One option is made to sound just awful, which basically pushes you towards the other one as the only sensible path forward. And this is what we call the false dilemma fallacy. It works by making you think you only have two choices, when in reality, there are almost always other options on the table. So the question you should always ask yourself is, wait a second, are those really my only two choices? So, spotting bad arguments is a fantastic defensive skill, for sure. But the real power, that comes when you go on the offensive and learn how to build your own rock-solid arguments. It's time to forge our sword. For a deductive argument, the gold standard is something called validity. Now, this has a very, very specific meaning in logic. It's not actually about whether the premises themselves are true in the real world. It's all about the structure. A valid structure means that if, and that's a big if your premises are true, then your conclusion is absolutely 100% guaranteed. To really get this, sometimes it helps to literally draw a picture of the argument. Believe it or not, we can actually see if an argument is valid just by using some simple diagrams. Let's build one together, step by step. Okay. Our first premise is no musicians are poets. So we draw a circle for musicians and a circle for poets. That premise tells us that the space where those two circles overlap, it's empty. Nothing exists there. So we just shade it out, gone. All right, now for premise number 2. Some students are musicians. This just means there's at least one person out there, we'll call them X, who exists in the space where the student circle and the musician circle overlap. So we'll go ahead and place our X right there in that shared space. Okay, now just look at what the diagram forces us to see. It's kind of cool, right? We know our X is a student and a musician. But wait, remember our first premise? It told us that absolutely nothing can exist in that overlap between musicians and poets. We shaded it out. So where can our X possibly go? It has to be in the part of the student circle that is outside the poet circle. There's literally nowhere else for it to be. And just like that, the conclusion some students are not poets is, well, it's visually guaranteed. You can see it's true. Now that is a valid argument. So diagrams are great, but for the really complex arguments, logicians have an even more powerful tool. They figured out how to strip away all the messy, confusing words of everyday language to see the pure underlying structure. It's almost like seeing the code behind a website. Just take a simple sentence like, if it is raining, then the ground is wet. In symbolic logic, we can boil that whole thing down to just R arrow W. That arrow perfectly captures the essential logical connection, that if-then relationship, without any of the extra words. It's clean, it's precise, and it is incredibly powerful. And this gives us a systematic, two-step method for testing pretty much any argument you can think of. First, you translate it from our messy human language into this clean, symbolic language. And then you use the rules of logic to test that code for validity. It's just a really powerful way to analyze even the most complicated piece of reasoning. So, what does all this mean for you, back in the real world, away from all the diagrams and symbols? Well, it means you now have the tools to be a more critical and, frankly, a more confident thinker. So, here it is. Here's your new toolkit. You now know that any argument is really just premises supporting a conclusion. You know to watch out for those sneaky fallacies from the nefarious author. You get that a valid argument's real power is baked into its structure. And you know that underneath all our words, there's a kind of logical code that you can now start to see. So I'm going to leave you with this one final thought. The next time you're listening to an argument, don't just let the words wash over you. Really try to see it. See the premises, see the conclusion, see the structure that's holding it all together, or maybe, just maybe, see the cracks where it all starts to fall apart. That right there is your new superpower.